It has since become the largest anti-NDAA organization in America, introducing or pushing over 18 pieces of state and numerous pieces of local anti-NDAA legislation. A grassroots, nonpartisan, nonviolent organization, PANDA assists groups across the political spectrum united to prevent the laws of war from being used here in the United States and on American citizens anywhere in the world. Dan has written for several publications, including the Huffington Post, Policy Mike, Occupy.com, and Western Journalism. He has spoken at Paul Fest, Northwest Ohio Conservative Conference, the California Republican Women's Federated Northern Division Convention, Libertopia, and the Richard Mack's Constitutional Sheriff and Peace Officers Convention, dozens of tea parties, peace gatherings, and more. And he has been interviewed on numerous radio shows, including Coast to Coast, Liberty Roundtable, Red Ice Radio, and Our Own Georgia. So at this time, I'd like to present to you Dan Johnson.
All right, is this going to let me be free? How you guys all doing tonight? Good! Come on, it's the Freedom Revolution. How you guys all doing tonight? All right. Man, this is a crowd. Wow. Okay. I am super excited, you can't tell. As you mentioned, my name is Dan Johnson. I'm the founder and national director of PANDA. And I'd like to recognize people today and really thank them for setting this up. First of all, let's give a big round of applause to Mike and Freedom Forum for bringing me here. And then I want to give a big round of applause to Abby and Keith for having me stay at their home so I could be here. And then last but certainly not least, Rico and Claire for organized Constitution protection zones and really helping make Santa Cruz one of them. Give them a round of applause. So, my long downward spiral in the world of politics, it began back in November 2011. I had kind of saw business as the way to go, and I owned a couple small businesses, you know, lawn stuff, standard teenager things. And then I went to college. It was my first semester studying political science, and I decided, you know, I'm going to go through this the normal way. I'm going to go through, you know, intern at a state house, and then work up city council, county commission, you know, work your way up through the system. And I came across a video called 63 Senators Betrayed You Today in 2011 fall, and I was just searching on the internet. I didn't expect to come across this. I ran into it, and I'm like, wow, what is this? And so I remember watching the video, and it was about a 3-minute long video, and I remember sitting there after it was over and going, you have absolutely got to be kidding me. This is happening in America? What? Because I had studied, as a homeschool kid, I had studied growing up the rise and fall of the Third Reich, and the rise and fall of Imperial Japan, and the Japanese-American detention during World War II. I read the stories of the Japanese-Americans who were stuck in the camps and how they talked about their experiences there. And I remember knowing history repeats itself, but could it really happen here? Could it really happen again? And if you compare the 2012 NDAA to the Decree for the Protection of People in State of the Third Reich, the Reichstag Fire Decree, many of you know of that. If you compare the 2012 NDAA and the Patriot Act to the Reichstag Fire Decree, get an original copy of the Weimar Constitution, the original German Constitution, and then look at the US Constitution, the sections they violate are not similar. They're identical. We have today the exact same legislation in place that 2 years before they invaded Poland, Nazi Germany had in place. And so when I saw that, I realized that I had to do something about it. I did about a month and a half of research, founded PANDA back in January 2012. Our first action was on February 21st of 2012. We went down to our local city council. I figure, you know, Congress isn't going to listen, I know that much. And so I'm going to go to my local city council and I'm going to ask them, I'm going to give them a piece of paper, we call it a resolution, give them a piece of paper saying, you will not allow the military to do this in our city, to do this in our county. And it sure enough went up to the city council, 21 of us. In fact, we were going at night. It was about 7, 8 o'clock at night. It was the middle of February, so it was really dark outside. And I have my reflector belt, but nobody else does. See the silver duct tape, the reflective duct tape? Okay, so we all have silver duct tape across us. With a silver duct tape brigade, we walk into city council. And we had local newspaper there, local TV cameras there. And we stood in front of city council, relayed our concerns, and I got an email, was copied on an email from the mayor to the head of city council saying, quote, "These students should have taken Government 160. They don't know the inner workings of our national government, and it's up to us, in some respects, to educate them." My city councilman told me, "The winds of politics are no longer in my favor. I cannot introduce your resolution. Do something you'd actually have an effect on." And so in April 2012, we launched PANDA nationwide. January 1st, 2013, we launched Operation Homeland Liberty. 50 states, 365 days. The goal is to stop the NDAA at the state level. All great chess players talk about how they lose at first, every single time. Well, as a young organization, we went full force at the state level, and we lost, big time. 18 pieces of state level legislation. The closest we got was a 32-33 vote in Colorado and the Colorado House. And so we turned our attention to the local level in October, launched the Take Back the Town campaign, and completely decentralized the organization, launched Take Back the Town campaign. First victory happened only 7 days later. Albany, New York, the capital of New York, became the first city in the country to ban the NDAA and ban the laws of war from happening in their city. Then we had a second victory, Oxford, Massachusetts, 2 days later, Webster, Massachusetts, October 21st, December 17th, Emmett, Idaho, and February 24th of this year, we got the first county in the nation, Gem County, Idaho, with 60 to 70 cities that are currently considering legislation against the NDAA and laws of war. So I have a little bit of a video I want to show, and Abby, do you think you could go up there and just hit play on the video? I'll move the slide over. But it's a quick video I want to show. It gives you a little bit of an intro to the 2012 NDAA.
Earlier this week, the president signed the National Defense Authorization Act.
A radical new claim of presidential power.
It gives the military the power to indefinitely detain American citizens suspected, not convicted, of some sort of involvement or affiliation with terrorism.
A bill that allows U.S. citizens to be transported overseas to prisons and held there without charges filed.
Senators John McCain and Carl Levin are looking to make America into a military state and give the president the power to be judge, jury, and executioner.
When President Obama signed the NDAA, sections of the bill were opposed by key members of his administration. Many civil liberties activists believe the law is unconstitutional.
What this bill does is it takes a wrecking ball to the United States Constitution.
It explicitly says that he has the authority to target American citizens because he believes they're bad people.
The government is claiming the power under the Afghanistan Authorization for Use of Military Force as a justification for entering American homes to grab people, indefinitely detain them, and not give them a charge in a trial.
Individual, no matter who they are, if they pose a threat to the security of the United States of America, should not be allowed to continue that threat.
And when they say, "I want my lawyer," you tell them, "Shut up.
Your time is
Get a lawyer. You're an enemy combatant."
There may be a number of people who cannot be prosecuted for past crimes. In some cases because evidence may be tainted, but who nonetheless pose a threat to the security of the United States.
There is one thing and one thing only that is protecting American citizens, and that's our Constitution.
Is a baseball stadium more important than liberty? Are liquor licenses more important than due process?
Please know what will come your way. Death, detention, prosecution.
It is time to stand, to peacefully bring about a revolution.
One day, somebody's going to have to say enough.
So this is the 2012 NDAA. Today we're going to go through a few things. What is it? How is it bad? Does the NDAA undermine your constitutional rights? And finally, what can and should you do about it? So, the NDAA, or National Defense Authorization Act, is exactly what it sounds. Defense authorization. Typically authorizes funding for military and defense policies. It just funds those policies. It does not change those policies. It funds the current policies or funds new policies. That's great. However, the NDAA, as it progressed, became a haystack that you start throwing needles into. It became this bill that would pass every single year, so anything you wanted passed that you couldn't get passed in any other piece of legislation, stick it in the NDAA and send it forward. For example, the 2008 NDAA authorized a military unit to operate on U.S. soil, only on U.S. soil, and for civil disobedience and crowd control purposes. This was later repealed in 2009. The 2010 NDAA established the Council of Governors. The Council of Governors is a governor from each one of the federal emergency management regions, and they were brought together to determine, America's national security and work on things like that. When the executive order was put in place describing the activities of this Council of Governors, one of them was to figure out how to use the military on U.S. soil and on U.S. citizens. They did. The 2012 NDAA, hidden inside this are sections 10.2.1 and 10.2.2. In a nutshell, they authorized the application of the laws of war to American soil and the indefinite military detention of any person, including an American citizen, without charge and without trial. It passed the House 283 to 136 and the Senate 93 to 7. Now these people supposedly can't agree what color ink they can write their letters with. Now they want you to believe that, yet they just agreed to violate 14 provisions of the United States Constitution almost unanimously. When the 2013 NDAA went forward with no changes to these provisions, it passed 98 to 0 in the Senate. Wow. The NDAA was signed by the President at 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning East Coast time, maybe 1 to 2 o'clock in the morning our time, when the President was in Hawaii on New Year's Eve. Yep. You were not supposed to know about this.
Before his re-election.
Before his re-election. The NDAA takes its authority from the 2001 Authorization for Use of Military Force. Who's familiar with the Patriot Act in here? Anybody? Yeah. Okay, good, good. What you didn't hear about was the 2001 AUMF. It passed around the same time, September 17th, 2001. You should have heard more about it. The 2001 AUMF reads as such. In general, the President is authorized to use all necessary and appropriate force against those nations, organizations, or persons he determined, planned, authorized, committed, or aided the terrorist attacks that occurred on 9/11, harbored such organizations or persons, or prevent future acts of international terror on U.S. soil. This is already dangerous because we're giving the President the sole and exclusive authority to determine who was involved with the 9/11 attacks. In fact, this legislation was interpreted so broadly that it was used as authorization to go into Afghanistan and wage war. And to give you an example of how broadly this was used, there was a young Arabic man in a hotel outside of the Twin Towers, and as you know, they evacuated everybody out of the hotels. Then the FBI started going through some of the records of who checked out in that room. He was in that room. There was a pilot's radio in that room. They detained him using the military for 4 to 5 weeks before a pilot showed up and said, "That's my radio, you got the wrong guy." This is the AUMF. The 2012 NDAA expands that authority. Section 10.2.1b2. A person who is a part of or substantially supported Al-Qaeda, the Taliban, or associated forces that are engaged in hostilities against the United States or its coalition partners, including any person who has committed a belligerent act or directly supported such hostilities in aid of such enemy forces. Now, who understood that?
I don't know.
Yeah. This is equivalent to you're driving down the road and you see a speed limit sign and it says, yes. So, the difference between the AUMF, NDAA 10.2.1b1 and b2. Now, this is interesting. Anyone who works with legislation knows when you cite another piece of legislation, all you have to do is cite it. Put a little footnote in there. However, they decided to copy and paste the language from the AUMF into the 2012 NDAA. This is so when you confront your congressman about why he voted for the 2012 NDAA, he can point to 1021b1 and go, look, nothing changed. We didn't do anything. Why are you mad at me? But 1021b2 expands it. So here's the difference. Any person who planned, authorized, committed, aided, or harbored, any person who is a part of or supported Al-Qaeda, the Taliban, or associated forces, engaged hostilities against the United States or its coalition partners, who commits a belligerent act or direct supports hostilities in aid of Al-Qaeda, the Taliban, TAQ. What's the difference? Planned, authorized, committed, associated forces, supported, direct support, substantial support, coalition partners. The difference is it goes from the person who commits the action to their friends, to some people who might know them, and to people who are generally connected to this person. This is equivalent to a person on your street being accused of murder, and the police department decides to arrest the whole block. This is what happens with the 2012 NDAA. So to recap, it changes current national security policy, and then it expands, number one, the targeting profile beyond the AUMF. Imagine the AUMF as a loaded gun pointed at every other country around the world except the United States. The NDAA does not change the gun. It does not change the caliber of the bullet. It points that gun at the United States and American citizens anywhere in the world. It changes the countries being protected. It adds coalition partners. By a show of hands, who knows we were coalition partners with Iran at one time? Okay. So if you were against Iran then and are still against Iran, does that mean that you are now going after coalition partners of the United States? We've been coalition partners with Britain, but we've definitely been enemies with Britain before. Coalition partners change. It's a moving target. The worst thing the 2012 NDAA does is change the time frame. Involvement in the terrorist attacks of 9/11 is no longer necessary. It changes from a policy of retribution to a policy of pre-crime. Who's heard the term, we got to stop the terrorists before they strike? Okay, all right. Who's seen the movie Minority Report? Okay, great movie. For those of you who have not seen it, I highly, highly recommend watching Minority Report with Tom Cruise. Tom plays a police officer in service of his local government. His job is he's in the pre-crime division. His job is to arrest people before they commit a crime. So he has video screens all over, and it's like, okay, I'm seeing this person about to stab someone, and he goes arrest them. I'm seeing this person about to burglarize a place, and he goes arrest them. When he's arrested for a crime he was not about to commit, he realizes he was never arresting people who are about to commit a crime. He was arresting enemies of the government. This is the danger of pre-crime, and this is why it's long-standing in the United States. We have innocent until proven guilty. It doesn't matter what we accuse you of, innocent until proven guilty. There's no prior crime in the 2012 NDAA. So, terrorism is a method and terror is an emotional reaction. So, first of all, terrorism is a method. You can't legislate either of these out of existence. If Congress passes a law one day and they say, you may no longer walk through doors forward, you must walk through doors sideways, who would follow that? Okay, one. Well, the rest of you who aren't paying any attention, why not? It makes it more efficient. You could fit two people through the same door. You could usually only fit one. It doesn't matter. The reason you would not follow that is legislation does not change a method. It does not change people's habits. The second, terror is an emotional reaction. So if Congress decides to pass a law banning sadness, America, we are entering the happy days. I can already see mainstream media supporting him on this. See, the talking heads go on. But who would follow that? Or would it stop you from being sad? Absolutely not. You cannot stop an emotional reaction with legislation. You should think twice when a politician tells you, I'm protecting you from terror. I'm protecting you from fear. So, what are some of the chances of being killed in a terrorist attack? Let's look at them. You're more likely to be killed or struck by lightning twice and live than die in a terrorist attack. Here's some more statistics. You're 18,000 times more likely to die from heart disease. You're 13,000 times more likely to die from cancer, 1,000 times more likely to die in a car accident, 12 times more likely to accidentally suffocate yourself in your sleep than die in a terrorist attack. You are 9 times more likely to choke to death on your own vomit than die in a terrorist attack. You are 8 times more likely to be killed by a police officer as an innocent in the line of duty than a terrorist. So why do we focus on terrorism? Why is every single time there's anything suspicious, the media screams terrorism, politicians scream terrorism? This Malaysian flight, they knew nothing about it within the first couple hours and they were already screaming terrorism, terrorism. It's all the terrorists. Why? What is the #1 word tyrannical dictatorships have used to control their people? Fear. Fear. What is terror? Extreme fear. What is a terrorist? It's a criminal the government wants to go after. It's the only difference between terrorism and a regular criminal. They can commit the exact same crimes and the government wants to go after you. They call you a terrorist. What a politician is telling you when they say that I am protecting you from terror is I am controlling you by fear. So, 21 days after the 2012 NDAA was signed into law, Judge Catherine Forrest heard a case. There was people called the Freedom 7. These are 7 activists. They include Chris Hedges, former New York Times journalist. They include a former member of, or a member of Icelandic Parliament. They include several people from all across the spectrum. In fact, Gun Owners of America was an amicus on the suit. Congressman Steve Stockman from Texas, an amicus on the suit. Bipartisan lawsuit where they said, this is unconstitutional. You could possibly detain us under the NDAA. So, Judge Forrest hears oral hearings in May of 2012, and she starts asking the government questions. So, what's a belligerent act? We don't know. Okay, all right, so what's substantial support, direct support? We don't know. Give us an example. Okay, I'll give you an example. Let's say someone writes a book. The rest of the book is blank, but in the front cover they put, I support the political goals of Al-Qaeda and the Taliban. Could that person be detained under the NDAA? We don't know. Okay, let me make this simple for you. These 7 plaintiffs who just came in front of me, could any of these people be detained under the 2012 NDAA? Oh, well, we'll have to check the laws of war. Okay, we'll go check with the laws of war. Come back. We can't tell you. After hearing this over and over and over again for a while, she eventually issues a statement, strikes down the law, issues an injunction, issues a statement. The government was unable to define precisely what direct or substantial support means. Thus, an individual could run the risk of substantially supporting or directly supporting an associated force without even being aware that he or she was doing so. This measure has a chilling impact on First Amendment rights. Yes. Within 24 hours, the Obama administration appealed. They got a stay of her ruling by the appeals court. It's currently headed to the Supreme Court. I hold no hope for this one. To recap, the 2012 NDAA does not define terms. It's very vague. Belligerent act, associated forces, substantially supported, and coalition partners are not defined in the NDAA. When will the war on terror end? Never. Never. That's when your detention will end under the NDAA. So, sometimes Congress will write laws that are somewhat vague, and they leave it up to the government agencies who are going to enforce the law to kind of decide how we're going to put this into place. A great example is environmental regulation. Congress will pass something that's somewhat vague and leave it up to the EPA to decide how they're going to enforce it. Well, let's look at some of the agencies that are going to be enforcing this and how do they define possible terrorist belligerent act. Anyone who demands identity privacy. This is from a document the Bureau of Justice Assistance, the FBI, put together called the Communities Against Terrorism Initiative. The Communities Against Terrorism Initiative is 30+ different documents for different businesses. They hand out to local business owners. Here's who you're supposed to call Homeland Security and the FBI immediately if you find any of these qualities in people. So you don't want to give out your social security number to Best Buy? Obviously a terrorist. Insist on paying with cash. Oh boy. Significantly alters appearance from visit to visit. Has missing hand or fingers. Strange odors. Oh wow. Make racist or extreme religious comments coupled with comments that are violent or appear to condone violence. What's the problem with appearance? It has nothing to do with intent. If I say I'm going to throw this clicker at Rico, I'm obviously not going to throw the clicker at him. However, to someone out there who may hear it and may not know what I'm doing, it may appear that I'm condoning violence. It has nothing to do with intent. My favorite, make suspicious comments regarding anti-US, radical theology, and vague or cryptic warnings that suggest or appear to endorse the use of violence in support of a cause. So, what's an anti-US comment?
I will not comply.
What else? Come on, throw some out.
9/11 was an inside job.
You're right.
What else?
I hate Obama.
Okay, what else?
The Illuminati.
It depends on who you're talking about. It depends on who you're talking to. In fact, the closest thing I saw to an anti-US comment that I guess could be generally agreed was some guy in Reno a couple days ago said, "The United States is the wrong shape." Okay, yeah, I can accept that one.
That's a good one.
It depends on who you're talking to. Radical theology. What's a radical theology? Christianity, Islam, Taoism, Buddhism, Shintoism. Depends on who you're talking to. What's the problem with a vague or cryptic warning?
It's vague. Cryptic.
It's vague or cryptic. You're not supposed to get it. Okay, let's carry on. This document was released 31 days after the 2012 NDAA was signed into law. It's the Department of Homeland Security's START report. It defines the next wave of terrorism in the United States. Who are they targeting? Groups or individuals who are nationalistic as opposed to universal international orientation. Anti-global. Suspicious of centralized federal authority.
We should be.
Reverent of individual liberty.
Yes.
And believe in conspiracy theories that involve grave threat to national sovereignty and or personal liberty. So who fits that description?
I do.
We do!
Okay, it's a terrorist get together.
Jihad, anybody?
I'll have a cup.
Single issue. Groups or individuals, PANDA, that obsessively focus on narrowly defined PANDA or specific issues. The Department of Homeland Security, according to this document, has classified PANDA as a terrorist organization because we have one issue and we're not established when we don't focus on everything else as well. So, people likely to commit violence speak against the government.
No.
What country had a law that required exile, imprisonment, or death for speaking against the government?
Germany.
Germany, what else? Soviet Russia. Soviet Russia, Penal Code 38. If you speak against the Communist Party, or you don't report somebody who speaks against the Communist Party, exile, imprisonment, or death for you and your family. They blame the government for their perceived problems. So, number one, all your problems are in your head. You have no real problems. They're all perceived. And number two, if you blame the government for your non-existent problems, you're considered a possible terrorist. Unusual or extreme actions that catch the attention of others. See how easy that was? The Fire Department of New York. I did not say police department. The Fire Department of New York was ordered to report the license plate number of any car that had a map on the front seat. Because apparently terrorists don't use GPS. Active online to show extreme views / connect with others. / is legal terminology. It means or. So who's ever sent an email? 3 people. Who's ever sent an email? Okay, all right. And in fact, a military document says you're supposed to report people who don't send email and aren't active online because they're also possible terrorist threats. Now let's have a little bit of fun. Who do you think put this list together of who is the next terrorist?
The terrorist.
As a hint, it would be too easy if there was the people at the bottom. Nope. Good guess. Homeland Security? Nope. Who else? Nope. Nope. Good guess. No.
States, people, corporations,
2,000 American police chiefs. 2,000 American police chiefs got together, and you can read the Time magazine article. It's called Police Discuss Terrorism at the White House. And they came up with this list of what you're supposed to look for in a possible terrorist. This is from a document from the Combating Terrorism Center at West Point. Challenging from the sideline, understanding America's violent far right. Violence derived from the modern anti-federalist movement. Several times in this document it mentions anti-federalists. Now, who are the anti-federalists? It's not a term you hear fairly often nowadays. There's not an anti-federalist book club next week. There's not an anti-federalist coffee party tomorrow. Anti-federalists refer to the people who wrote the Bill of Rights and ensured it was in the Constitution. When they're saying anti-federalists are the next threat, who are they targeting? Us. People like us.
Who have rights.
Anyone recognize these two young men? Or either of them?
No.
Any guesses? I have people that guess Justin Bieber. No, I would not use him in my presentation.
Thank you.
Okay, the top is Cameron D'Ambrosio. He's 18 years old. The bottom, also 18 years old, Justin Carter. Now, Cameron D'Ambrosio is a Methuen, Massachusetts teen who rapped about the Boston bombing shortly after it happened. Do I think that's stupid? Uh-huh. Does it deserve 20 years in prison?
No.
Absolutely not. But because they said terrorism, terrorism, and called him a terrorist, they got away with raiding his home, putting him in prison, and he was eventually acquitted by a grand jury.
Good.
Were he not acquitted, he would have been facing 20 years because they called him a terrorist. The second young man was not so lucky. Justin Carter, 18 years old, Austin, Texas. Am I the only person in this room who knows what League of Legends is? Anybody?
I've heard of it.
Okay.
You're aggressive daylight challenge.
League of Legends is an online multiplayer game. So it's a massive multiplayer online video game. And Justin was called insane on Facebook later after playing this game. He responded with, "Oh yeah, I'm real messed up in the head. I'm gonna go shoot up a school full of kids and eat their still beating hearts."
I heard that.
Now, I'm a Yankee, we call that sarcasm. But a Canadian woman did not. She called the Austin police. They charged him with terrorism. He was facing 15 years in prison, $50,000 bail. He ended up spending, he was convicted, he ended up spending several years in prison. They got the bail, they got him out of prison, and the judge refuses to stop prosecuting. I could give example after example after example. Hamilton, Ohio, two girls, 15 and 17 years old, are going back and forth. One girl says, "Oh, I hate this school so much." And the next girl said, "Oh yeah, we should totally shoot up this whole school." And the next girl says, "Oh yeah, me first, LOL. Now, as a reminder, if I'm going to mug you, I don't walk up and say, "I'm going to mug you," LOL. They were charged with terrorism and will face prison time. San Diego, Twitter, the boy posted the wrong tweet, 13 years old, will face prison time. Last example, anyone know the Drano and aluminum foil bombs that you can put together that make a really loud bang? Okay, all right, a couple people. So a bunch of young kids wanted to scare their neighbor, and this bunch of young teenagers, they put together, they're 13, 14, 15, they put together one of those Drano aluminum foil bombs and put it in front of the door. So the neighbors open the door, knocks over the bottle, Drano aluminum foil, go bang! So the neighbors call the police. The police are charging those young men with operating a weapon of mass destruction.
They couldn't destroy a thing.
The punishment for weapon of mass destruction is capital.
Capital? No way.
So, of all those categories I just mentioned, who fits in one?
Wow.
Okay, all right. If you happen to fit in one of those categories, and before I go on to this, I want to highlight Keith. Keith actually has the distinction of being on the terrorist watch list for the United States. His crime, handing out food and making a political statement while doing so. So you have an example of how we've stretched the word terrorism to include everyone. If you happen to fit in that category, here's what could happen to you. In general, 1022A1. It says provided in paragraph 4, the armed forces of the United States shall hold, the person described in paragraph 2, we just read, belligerent acts, substantial support, etc., who is captured in the course of hostilities authorized by the AUMF, that's the war on terror, in military custody, pending disposition to the law of war. Now note, this is not your local police department. This is not your local sheriff. This is the armed forces of the United States banging down your door in the middle of the night and taking you off to Guantanamo Bay or Quantico or any other military prison.
Hell no.
Do we really want to give the president that kind of power?
No!
Do we really want to give the president that kind of power?
No!
Absolutely not. I wouldn't even give my own mother that power. Okay. Does the NDAA undermine your constitutional rights? Yes. This is a short list that violates over 14 provisions. You can look that full list up online on our website. Article 1, Section 9, Suspension Clause. Habeas corpus shall not be suspended unless in cases of public danger, times of public rebellion or invasion where the public safety will require it. They're not suspending habeas. They're just going around it. Article 3, Section 2, grand jury indictment. If you do not get a trial, you will not get a grand jury. Article 3, Section 3, treason. This is interesting. 2 points. Treason shall only exist in levying war against them and in giving aid and comfort to their enemies. So, if Congress declares America the battlefield and you the enemy, how much more evidence do I need they've declared war on you? That is a treasonable offense. Secondly, the way that the Obama administration, many of you know, has assassinated 4 American citizens under these powers. They are considering assassinating a 5th. They announced it 3 or 4 weeks ago. In assassinating these American citizens, what they've said is they're traitors. They're traitors to the country. They're traitors to America. There's only one crime defined in the Constitution, and that's treason. Because when the Founding Fathers were fighting the British and peacefully going after the British would bring them in and call them traitors and hang them without a charge, without a trial. Traitor carries a huge weight when you call someone that name. So treason was put in our Constitution. So the military could never go after someone and never go after an executed American citizen or do their best not to go after an executed American citizen. They must be brought in and tried for treason because the bar, the level that's set to be convicted of treason is a confession in open court or the testimony of 2 witnesses to the same overt act. It's the highest bar for conviction of any crime in the country. This is the treason clause. They're absolutely violating it. First Amendment, free speech. Second Amendment, 4th, 5th, 6th, 8th, 14th. These provisions of the Constitution all violated by the 2012 NDAA. And yet, that's not the most dangerous part of the law. So, most dangerous part of this is the requirement to detain. Look at it again and highlight a different part. The armed forces of the United States shall hold a person described in paragraph 2, which you just read, belligerent act, associated forces, etc., under the law of war. Now, the law of war is very interesting. It was put together Geneva Conventions. They put together 2 categories. It was rules for countries to make war with each other in wartime. 2 categories, combatants and non-combatants. Very clear cut. Non-combatant, civilian or a corpsman. A combatant, you've taken up arms against a country with a flag of some group as well. Now, both categories prohibit us executing someone in your custody, and both categories prohibited torture. The Bush Justice Department did not like that very much. They created a new category out of thin air called unlawful enemy combatants. This category has all the punishments of the laws of war, but 0 of the protections. They use this category to torture the suspected 9/11 hijackers sitting in Guantanamo Bay. Then, in 2009, the Council on Foreign Relations advised Congress to change the definition of the category. Because as an unlawful enemy combatant, you can only detain people on the combatant side, or execute people on the combatant side, or torture people on the combatant side. But you change the name, you can go after civilians, non-combatants, medical corpsmen, etc. They changed the category in the Military Commissions Act 2009 from unlawful enemy combatant to unprivileged enemy belligerent. Now, number 1, this implies your rights to life, liberty, and property are a privilege. And number 2, this allowed them to take non-combatants. This is exactly what they called the 4 American citizens they executed, including a 16-year-old boy, who when Robert Gibbs, the head of the Obama, one of the advisors of the Obama administration, when Robert Gibbs was asked, why did you kill the 16-year-old? What threat did he pose to the United States? He said, should have had better parents. This is what happens when you put aside a category of people that are guilty until proven innocent. And why do you think the term belligerent act is in the NDAA? It's an odd term to use, isn't it? You don't really hear that often. Belligerent act is in the NDAA because the category that was created to torture and used to execute now applies to every single American citizen anywhere in the world and any person on U.S. soil. So, the law of war has been used widespread in this country twice before. Who knows Abraham Lincoln suspended habeas corpus? Okay, a good amount of you. Most people have not read that proclamation. That proclamation is Proclamation 94. When Abraham Lincoln suspended habeas corpus, he did something much worse. He said, anyone found disloyal to the Northern government will be placed under military jurisdiction. Lincoln detained 15,000 Northerners and executed most of them. The Supreme Court in Ex parte Milligan, ex parte means he's dead. The Supreme Court in Ex parte Milligan condemned Lincoln for doing that and said the Constitution is a shield that protects both rulers and men in times of war and times of peace, and to say that any of its provisions could be suspended during the great exigencies of government could lead directly to tyranny and despotism. And then we ignored them. 1942, February 21st, President Franklin Delano Roosevelt signs Executive Order 9066. This executive order, who knows that we detained 120,000 Japanese Americans during World War II? Yeah. Okay? Yep. That executive order says nothing about detention. It only says the military shall be given control over certain areas of the country, just like applying the laws of war. 120,000 Japanese Americans, American citizens, detained without trial. Let's bring it closer to home. Last year, the law of war was used twice. Who knows the name Christopher Dorner? Okay, all right. Former LAPD cop who is accused of shooting other LAPD cops, right? Oh, yeah. So when they're chasing Christopher Dorner through Big Bear Lake, California, or they think he's in Big Bear Lake, California, it's a town of 3,000 people, they lock it down. They search every single home, regardless of whether the people wanted their homes to be searched or not, because the military had control over that operation, not the police department. And when they went to Dorner, instead of capturing him, throwing tear gas, they knew where he was in a cabin, they could have thrown tear gas or any number of non-lethal weapons at him. They firebombed his cabin and burned him to a crisp. Okay?
I heard different.
This is what happens when the military takes control, and firebomb, you know, it was a ground bomb, it wasn't a plane, but this is what happened when the military takes control of an area. Even more egregious, Watertown, Massachusetts. Who saw the police response to the Boston Marathon bombing? Okay, a couple of you. You can watch videos online of people being ripped out of their home at gunpoint. Of people, you know, there's videos of interviews of Watertown residents, and they show their homes have bullet holes all in the homes because they didn't care where they were shooting. A locked down Watertown. They closed off every street. Nobody gets out, nobody gets in. This was called a writ of assistance. This was one of the reasons we seceded from Great Britain, was a general warrant and a writ of assistance. And they searched every single home whether the people wanted them there or not. In fact, I was listening to a news report as this is going on. There's a lull in the action. And so the broadcaster asked his reporter in the field, so I hear the military came to they came to your house. How did that go? And he's like, oh yeah, they came to my house and they searched my home and they pointed guns at my kids and they kind of looked all around. And then I had my kids thank them for their service as they walked out the door. Those kids will be traumatized forever. Yeah. I've had people burglarize my home. I've been shot at a point-blank range. They missed, thank God. But I know what that's like. They could be traumatized forever, and the military did not care. This is what happens when the military takes over an area. They're not designed to enforce civil law. In fact, we have the Posse Comitatus Act in the United States, and the reason we have the Posse Comitatus Act banning the military from using or enforcing the law is because after the Reconstruction era in the Civil War, the military was out there in the streets stopping blacks from voting. That was a reason we have the Posse Comitatus Act. So, let's go back to the law. 1021C, disposition under the law of war. Notice it says may include the following. That means it could include more, or it could include less. It's up to them. Detention under the law of war without trial until the end of hostilities, essentially war on terror. Trial under Chapter 47A of Title 10 U.S.C. as amended by the Military Commissions Act of 2009. This is trial in front of a military court. If you look up the case of ex parte hearing, it's very interesting. American citizens got stuck in Nazi Germany, joined the Nazi army to come and land, and they landed on Massachusetts shores, turned themselves and all the saboteur teams in, were executed when brought in front of a military commission.
Wow.
Transfer trial by an alternative court or competent tribunal having lawful jurisdiction. What this means is, because in the Military Commissions Act, the Military Commission said, we have jurisdiction anywhere in the world. Every court has jurisdiction anywhere in the world that has to do with the military. So what this means is if they decide to give you a trial, and they think it'd be easier, you know, that you're picked up in Nevada, and they think it'd be easier to convict you in Florida, they can send you to Florida for trial.
Or Iran.
Or, and that covers number 4. Transfer to the custody or control of the person's country of origin, any other foreign country, or any other foreign entity. We can give you to whoever we want, whenever we want, wherever we want, and we can do it however we want. That is extraordinary rendition. I don't want to be detained, but I'd rather be detained by the United States military than the Pakistani, or the Russian, or the German military, because at least I speak the language. So they've taken the U.S. Constitution, once the supreme law of the land, and essentially allowed it to be replaced from time to time with the laws of war. So, how do we stop this? As an organization, we started out fairly centralized. We started out as a hierarchical command structure. People would come in, we'd help them set up a chapter, we'd help them set up a team. And eventually you get to the point where not only are you accruing too much power and risking becoming corrupt and risking becoming co-opted by the establishment, but you are also, the bureaucracy is amazing. You ever tried to manage 90 teams? That's not happening anytime quick. So we flipped the organization. Instead of us doing the work now that we have the experience, we backed off. We said, we'll be the support structure. And instead of having people come into our organization to train them, we're going to provide all the materials for free online. Anyone can pick them up. Anyone can take them to their city or their county to take back their county and stop the NDAA in their city or county. And then we'll give them some support. So this is what happened when we launched the Take Back campaign. Now, there are 3 phases to banning the NDAA and the laws of war in any city or in any county. I've already told you, we've got 4 cities and 1 county down so far, 60 to 70 working on it. These 3 phases are as such. First, pass the Restoring Constitutional Governance Resolution, RCGR. It's a resolution that says the Constitution has always banned the laws of war and will always ban the laws of war from being applied here on U.S. soil. You cannot do this here in this city or here in this county because all of us on the city council or the county took an oath to the Constitution. And if we can't uphold that oath to the Constitution, we may as well take an oath to the Russian Constitution because they're doing just as good a job of upholding it. That is phase 1. That puts the paper in place. That gives you both A, it gives you the authority to go to the public and say, hey, look, local government is concerned about this. People listen more when the government does something. Unfortunately, but it's the case. So it gives you some help in the public eye. Just like everyone has unalienable rights. All men, all persons have unalienable rights. They may not be recognized, but they're unalienable rights. It helps us in the United States to be able to point to a document and say, I have those rights, I have those protections. It also allows the DA to prosecute any person. Not just, oh, if the state helps or if the city helps. No, 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 no. If the city doesn't help, it's like a cop goes by, sees you being mugged and goes, not my job, and walks by. This is any person, whether federal, state, local, international, doesn't matter who you are, you cannot do this in this city or in this county. And the DA will prosecute you, and we can push the DA to prosecute you because it's illegal here. The second phase, to put an official departmental police or county sheriff, depending on which area you're going after, that any officer that allows this to happen will be immediately terminated. See, there's a saying that a man finds it hard to understand something when his job depends on him not understanding it. Well, we use that in our favor. If his job depends on not understanding that the military wants to take away this citizen's rights and constitutional protections and detain them in Guantanamo Bay, probably won't understand the military, what they were saying, you know. Oh, I can't hear you. Hang up the phone. The third phase, because there are two groups of people you should never trust, politicians and law enforcement. Why? Because they believe they have more power than you. So we help people set up a citizen's watch. The citizen's watch is like a neighborhood watch, except instead of watching your fellow citizen, you're watching your government and keeping an eye on them and making sure they're following the resolution and making sure they're held accountable. Because Jefferson said, ultimately, it's up to the people. Ultimately, the people have to defend their rights. Their representatives will not do it, and their law enforcement will not do it, and their military will not do it. Ultimately, it's up to the people to defend their own rights, and that is the third phase of banning the NDAA in any city or any county. Now, I have some exciting news for you. Santa Cruz has already passed a do-nothing resolution. Now, a do-nothing resolution, essentially, it doesn't do anything about it, but it acknowledges the problem exists. So you've already a step forward with your council. They acknowledge the problem exists. And currently, there is a resolution on the, or has been presented to the city of Santa Cruz, the Restoring Constitutional Governance Resolution has been presented to the city of Santa Cruz to get them to pass it and make this city a Constitution protection zone from the NDAA and from the laws of war. Now, what that means, and I've learned the hard way how politics works. Poly being many and ticks being blood-sucking creatures. Okay, so I've learned the hard way how politics works. The only way this works, it doesn't matter if you walk up in front of them and you call them traitors, or if you walk in front of them and give the most eloquent speech ever given. It does not matter. The only thing that matters is if they fear for their re-election. If they fear that they will not get re-elected. And so in this city, you guys have a chance, and I believe it's the 25th at 4:30. The 25th of this month at 4:30. We have a chance in Santa Cruz. I'll only be here for a little bit. There are plenty of people like Keith. There are plenty of people like Mike and like Rico who are organizing and getting this going. On the 25th of this month, if we flood the city council like they've never seen it before, and then we say, you know what, if you don't hear from us if you don't listen to us this time, we'll come back again, and we'll come back again, and we'll come back again, because the next generation did not deserve this. The next generation did not deserve to grow up in a world where the military can detain American citizens and detain persons on U.S. soil without charge or trial. We will come back again and again and again until you stand up for our rights and stand up for our liberties. If we do this in Santa Cruz, and if we email the city council and phone the city council, flood their phones, flood their emails, and if we show them that this is something that they will lose their re-election over, we can ban the NDAA and the laws of war in the city of Santa Cruz. So, I'm often asked, you know, why are you in this? And any activist and anyone who's been in activism knows it ain't for the money. And there's two reasons why I'm in this, and I kind of hinted at the previous reason. Thomas Paine said, if there be trouble, let it be in my day, so that my children can live in peace. I have two young brothers. I meet with young people. I was teaching at a high school for disadvantaged kids a couple of days ago, and spent a great time with all of them. And you know, what did that child do to deserve their parents being thrown in Guantanamo Bay for a political statement they made? I don't think they did anything to deserve that. And I want to be able to look a child in the eye at one point, and I want to be able to tell them, you are free. And I can't do that today. I can't do that while this is in play. And secondly, I was in Coos County, Oregon, and there was a young lady from the Progressive newspaper. She come up, she started talking about her son who had come home from Iraq and earned 2 Purple Hearts. And she started talking about the Oedipov and the Tomb of the Unknown Soldier. In the Tomb of the Unknown Soldier, the Oedipov says, if the unknown soldier came back today, would he see that what he was fighting for was worth it? No. Over 1 million people shed their lifeblood on foreign soil. Whether you believe they were fighting for your freedom or not, they believe they were fighting for your freedom. And they believe they were fighting for a better world here in the United States. And if they came back, would they see that their sacrifice and the sacrifice of their brothers and sisters was worth it? And I don't think they would. And so today, I will do everything I can, but I'm one person. I'm handing this information to you. It's up to you guys now. I live in Ohio. I'm nowhere near California. I love California. It's like a second home to me. But I'm nowhere near here. It's up to you now. I care about my liberties, my rights, and my future children's liberties and rights. And if you care as much about your children's liberties and rights and your grandchildren's liberties and rights, I'm handing you what was worked before. I'm essentially handing you the key. Here's the information. Here's the solution. It's up to all of you now to take back your city and to take back the city of Santa Cruz. Thank you guys so much.
One day, somebody's going to have to say enough.